and distinctions-based service approaches can recognize the unique needs of women and families for whom exclusion, trauma, culture, faith, family, and community considerations compound the complexity of the abuse that they are facing. According to a 2021 study that was completed for Statistics Canada, 1 in 3 visible minority women report having experienced psychological, physical, or sexual violence at the hands of an intimate partner. 1/4 of young visible minority women, that's those who are between the ages of 15 and 24 years, had experienced violence in the last 12 months. Now, statistics are important because they allow us to make evidence-based investments in programs and services that are needed, but statistics are also very cold. They dehumanize the actual experiences of people who have been through domestic violence. My first exposure to statistics such as these was with my very first professional position, which was as a policy analyst with the arm of the government of Manitoba that funded women's shelters in that province. And as a policy analyst, I was in charge of making data-driven decisions on how long women could stay in shelter. I tracked the data on how long women were staying, I asked questions on whether they had kids, and I also tried to understand how they would describe themselves from a race or ethnicity perspective. And then it was up to me to recommend how long those women should be allowed to stay in the shelters that we had. And that should not have been a statistical analysis. What we should have done is collected that data to see what was happening and then said, you can stay as long as you need to, but that's not how things work. And that to me was a fairly shameful answer. It should have been stay as long as you need to, and it was not. And so I began to ask some questions around how we can make it better. And I began to ask questions around where are women going once they leave? And the answers were even worse. They're going back to the offender. They're going back to the families that allowed the violence to happen. They're going into positions of being homeless. Their kids will go into foster care, or they will go and stay in those situations of violence that these women helped them flee. They will fall into addiction, and they will be displaced from the very supports that they need. And all of that was unacceptable. That was a very, very hard lesson to learn in my very first position. And I remember thinking, if I'm ever in a position of leadership again, I will lead with respect for those who need support, and I will lead with compassion. And that's what I've tried to do in my lifetime. I have also spent the next number of years since then trying to do what I can as a volunteer and a professional in any capacity to make things better and ensure that we change the system and ensure that we are supporting women in the way they need to be supported and challenging status quo. And I particularly started focusing on the complexities that arise for women of color, women in marginalized positions, and Indigenous women and their families. And when I began to unpack all of this, I began to see so much of my own community, the Punjabi community, the South Asian community. I began to understand how women from a very early age are expected to be educated so they can be marriageable. And once you get married, your education doesn't matter anymore. That's when you should start cooking and cleaning and having babies and looking after the family. On top of that, you're expected to take care of elders. You're expected to speak nicely. You're expected to look beautiful all of the time, and you are expected to be reverential to everyone. And that is exhausting. That is a very heavy burden to place on women. And if they speak up and they speak out, quite often they face violence. And that violence perpetuates itself because they are then told, shh, don't say anything. Don't sully the name of the family. Don't sully the name of your husband. For goodness sake, don't let them think that our community is like this. We need to show that this doesn't happen to our people. And on and on and on it goes. And that's the exact problem. The cycle can't continue to perpetuate. In 2007, I decided to do something about this. It was an interesting adventure. I pulled together 20 service organizations that help women in positions of domestic violence, their kids, and also the offenders. So I tried to bring together everyone to see how we could have a meaningful conversation. And I said, I will do this all in Punjabi for the Punjabi community. I will be your translator. And people looked at me and said, are you out of your mind? I don't think you can speak Punjabi well enough. I don't think you know the system well enough. And I said, it doesn't matter. I can speak it well enough. It's not a big deal. And I'll tell you what happened to me in that little journey. I was told that my Punjabi wasn't fancy enough. I don't know if there's any Punjabis in the house. Yeah. I was a little too pendu. Yeah. I was village Punjabi. Yeah. And I should have been a little bit more educated in my speech. And so they would fix the words for me and they would teach me things like, "Karelu chagda," not "khadka dadka," right? Things like this. So, and then somebody said to me, well, what are you gonna wear? I said, I don't know, what does it matter what I'm gonna wear? And all of a sudden that became the focal point. Are you gonna wear a traditional Punjabi outfit? Are you gonna wear white people clothes? How are you gonna turn out? What does it matter? What possible difference could it make? And then somebody said, this is big in my culture as well, log ki kahange. What will people say? What will people think of you going out there and talking about domestic violence? We shouldn't be saying that it happens in our community. It doesn't happen in our community. D, does it? No. Mama D says, yes, it does. And so the day came, and it was a blistering snowstorm, of course, as it always is when you organize something. But it was a packed house. It was like a crowd about this big, and it was fantastic. However, in this sea of people, there was about 4 women. One was my mom, and she had 3 aunties with her to keep her company. And it was all men, it was all the uncles in all of the seats. And I remember thinking, oh goodness, where are your women? And they were all at home taking care of the kids. You know, doing the laundry and waiting for the men to come home. And I remember one of the women that was a service provider got up, and God bless her, she said, "Oi, thodiyan jananiyan kithe? Where are your women?" And then they started realizing that maybe we should have women at events like this. And so, I kind of turned the world on its head a little bit. But 14 years later, only 14 years later, we are finally in the Punjabi community having our first transitional housing project. Now, I didn't make that happen. That was not me. I'm not trying to take credit for it, but I played a small little part because I wasn't quiet. I refused to be quiet. I didn't care what people would think, because the lives of these women and their families was more important than anything that I would face. So I say to all of you here who are here this evening, thank you for believing, thank you for supporting, and thank you for being bold and courageous. Those of you who have been through these horrific experiences, thank you for standing strong and helping others get out of them. Those of you who have known of people in these situations, thank you for supporting them. And for those who have never been touched by domestic violence, you are incredibly fortunate, and I am happy that you are still taking the time to come out today and support an important cause like this. So to Mama D, I want to call you that. I'm probably a lot older than you, but I think this is fun. D, congratulations on Ruth's house. Bless you for everything you are doing. Congratulations.
Wow. Thank you so much, Minister. Okay, you love the song? Okay, she's not here, so we just, okay, we just said we should continue. Okay. Oti ṣọdún yìí ó ṣàmọ́dún, ọdún ẹ̀ lóde làwa bá ọ ṣe. Adéọlá o, ọmọ wọn nífẹ̀ẹ́ oyè, ìfẹ́ oyè lágbo, ọmọ olóde kan tẹ́rẹ́, ọmọ olódò kan tààrà, odò tó ṣàn wéréke, tó dé ìkùlé àṣìlẹ̀ tó dá bàtà, ó dé ìkùlé adéláwẹ̀ tó dòkú, oníkẹ́kẹ́ kò gbọ́dọ̀ bú, àbàbàjá wọn kò gbọ́dọ̀ bú ẹ, ògèdègèdè oníṣọ̀bọ̀rọ̀ ni ó borí dọ̀nà gbẹ, a kì í dúró nìkan nífẹ̀ẹ́ ọ̀nì, a kì í bẹ̀rẹ̀ kí wọ́n nífẹ̀ẹ́ oyè o, kò ga kò bẹ̀rẹ̀, là ń kí wọ́n nífẹ̀ẹ́ o dáyé, èmi wá kọ́ máa nífẹ̀ẹ́ mo là kún, ọba nílò ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ fún, ọmọ má kánjú ọlá o, ayáde kùgbé o, sí ní kájọ lọ, sí ní kájọ lọ sílé ọkọ rẹ o, sí ní kájọ lọ sílé ọkọ rẹ o, sí kájọ, sí ní kájọ lọ, sí ní kájọ lọ sílé ọkọ rẹ o, sí ní kájọ sílé ọkọ rẹ o, sí ní kájọ lọ. Adéwálé lẹ o, àwọn olú ọmọ wọn ló ń dún ẹ̀gbìn. Gbàgbọ́ ọmọ là àti gbàjúgbàlẹ̀. Ọmọ lẹ́wọ̀n wọ̀ yìí. Àwọn olúwo kókó. Àwọn olúwo kókó. Ọmọ màlú sọ. Àwọn olúwo kókó. Ìṣọ̀rọ̀ mọ̀ sọ̀rọ̀. Àwọn olúwo kókó. Títí ayé òṣì wá kayọ̀ o. Títí ayé òṣì wá kayọ̀. Ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ títí ayé òṣì wá kayọ̀ o. Ojú ewu ríran wé máa ń sọkún. Ẹnu ewu kọrin wé máa ń gbòṣe. Ṣé títí ayé òṣì wá kayọ̀ o. Ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ Adéọlá ọlọ́dún ní ìmọ̀dún rẹ̀ lọ́dún. Ó ti ṣọdún èyí tán. Ó ṣe tẹ̀mí sí nínú owó, nínú ọlá, nínú àìkú, tí ń ṣe baálẹ̀ ọ̀rọ̀. Lílọ rẹ̀ oníbáráyé ní ẹni tó bá ní ọmọ lọ lò ní débá. Ìrè lójú owó rí, ilé lójú rẹ̀ ló máa rí ní gbogbo ọjọ́ gbogbo. Ó ti ṣọdún èyí o. Ó ṣe tẹ̀mí sí kò ní já ṣe mọ́. Oníjáṣe ọdún yìí o, oníjáṣe ọdún yìí o, oníjáṣe mọ́, oníjáṣe mọ́ ọdún yìí o, oníjáṣe ó wá dòkò tó ọmọ àfìdí tó ràn ẹ́, dòkò tó ọmọ Adéọlá dòkò tó Thank you very much.
are you, ma?
God bless you.